everyone. I'm Deborah Martin, and I would like to welcome you back to the Invisible Matters podcast. Remember, this is where we are constantly reminded that we all have strengths and we all have challenges. And sometimes those challenges are not always apparent to other people. And so we want to be reminded just to give people a little bit more grace, step back and be more patient and just think maybe something else is going on here that I'm not aware of. And one of the topics that has come across my view, I would say the last couple of years, I have realized that some people in my circle who are adults have been diagnosed with ADHD, not as children, but in adulthood. And so I thought that would be a good topic for us to talk about today. And so we are going to have a really rich conversation. My guest is Kai Keenan Westcott. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Many of you all may be familiar with him. He's all over Instagram and different places, on the internet.
Sure.
Kai is a mental health creator, content creator, and a digital marketing expert. He is also a brand manager at LB Capital, and he is host of the Vibe with Kai. Did I say that right?
Yeah, the Vibe Kai podcast.
The Vibe with Kai podcast, where he discusses his own personal mental health journey. It is quite obvious that Kai is very talented, very smart, and gifted. And he is a prime example, I think, of what we talk about here at Invisible Matters in terms of a successful person who is coping every single day of his life with different challenges. And so you were diagnosed with ADHD in your 30s. I would like for you to start out by kind of taking us on your journey in terms of childhood and before you were diagnosed. How did you end up being diagnosed in your 30s?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I look back at everything now and I realized that it was clear as day the things that I was struggling with that were ADHD related. We just had no idea that it was ADHD related. And where I grew up was a predominantly Black neighborhood. And the people that I looked up to, you're not talking about mental health. I listen to hip hop, I watch basketball. I looked up to my dad, none of which were talking about mental health. Allen Iverson was my favorite player growing up. He was not talking about mental health. He was talking about practice, right? Like that kind of stuff is what I grew up with. And so I never thought that ADHD was a thing that I was dealing with and struggling with my entire life. And I would often feel like I was lazy. I would often feel as though I didn't have the same sense of urgency that my that my classmates had. I played a lot of sports. I felt like I didn't have the same energy that my teammates had. And I just thought I wasn't working hard enough. And it wasn't until I turned 34 when I realized that the signs were there the whole time, but nobody noticed it, including myself. So it's easy to think back at it playing like a woulda, coulda, shoulda game. But I look back at it now and say, okay, it's what made me who I am today. And I'm proud of that.
Because everybody has a different journey.
Yes.
And I'm sure you now learned a lot and you are probably able to help other people more because it took you longer to find it out.
Yeah.
So things do happen, I believe, for a reason. How did you actually, or did something happen in terms of you taking that step to get a formal diagnosis?
Yeah, great question. So it was in the fall of 2020. What year is it? I forgot what year it is. 2024, right? So 2022. I don't know. I don't even know what the day it is anymore. Time flies, but it was the spring of 2022, and I was struggling mental health wise. And I'll never forget, I was laying in my bed for about 3 days straight, and I couldn't get up. I had no idea what was wrong. I just knew something was wrong. And at the time, my old roommate said, "Okay, you should probably go talk to a therapist." And I said, "No, that's dumb. No, I'm not going to do that. There's nothing wrong with me."
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while, but they finally got me to, convinced to go do it. Talk to the therapist, and they diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder and
Mm-hmm.
severe depression. And so I started getting treated for that, and something still felt off. And I was documenting, how I was feeling with the medicine I was taking, the therapy I was going through, and something still just felt like it wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when my therapist said, "Okay, I think based upon what you're telling me, we should probably get you tested for ADHD as well." And I was like, "I don't think I have ADHD," because a lot of the biggest misconception about ADHD is that it's just like, "Oh, I can't sit still," or, squirrel kind of thing. And it's way deeper than
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, "Okay, fine." Got tested. And the more I started to do research on ADHD, I realized, wow, it has been here my entire
Mm-hmm.
life. And so it all started with my therapist, started with the diagnosis of other things. And then from there,
Mm-hmm.
it led into an ADHD diagnosis later on that year.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you something. Um, is it possible that because the ADHD wasn't identified, that it contributes to some people, maybe you, developing depression or having anxiety? So even though those were found out first,
Mhm.
I just wonder how much of you not knowing that you had ADHD contributed to that.
Yeah, they all go hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive. They all,
Mm-hmm.
work together. I always say that they're all holding hands, walking down the street together.
Mm-hmm.
They all work together, and they all affect each other in both good ways and not so good ways. And I can even give you an example. Sometimes with ADHD, one of the things that we struggle with is our executive functioning not
Right.
functioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have big plans for your day and your executive function is just not functioning, you end up beating yourself up over the things that you did not get completed that day. That
Mm-hmm.
contributes to the depression of you beating yourself up over, the
Mm-hmm.
woulda, coulda, shouldas, and the anxiety. I didn't get this done today. How am I going to
Right.
get this done? How am I going to?
Right.
Am I going to have time to do this tomorrow? So it just one big vicious cycle that you have to learn how to manage in a healthy
Mm-hmm.
way. Otherwise, that spiral is going to affect you in a bigger way than it should.
So worrying about getting it done gets in the way of you getting it done.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
And I do want to explain executive functioning a little bit more for viewers who may not know.
Sure.
As a school psychologist, I
Mhm.
talk about it a lot, and you're familiar with it. But really, if you think about the term executive, it really refers to all of the skill sets
Mhm.
that an executive would need to be successful. So time management,
Mhm.
organizational skills,
Mhm.
being prepared, study habits,
Mhm.
knowing how to start a task
Yep, that's
and
the big.
develop a plan to complete the task.
Yeah.
So all of those go, hand in hand.
Mhm.
And some people actually may struggle more with a specific part of it,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
time management,
Yes.
which is huge.
Yeah, yeah,
So my papers are turned in late, and
yeah.
I'm studying the night before the test.
That was always
Was
me.
any of that?
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing, I also didn't fight it because I found that the grades that I got on the tests and the papers that I turned in the night before at
Mm-hmm.
11:59 were usually better grades than the ones I actually put some thought into.
See.
So that was
Mm-hmm.
my excuse for my poor grades in
Mm-hmm.
college. Like honestly, at the end of the day, we really like it's just so funny how clear it is now looking back at it.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that you had mentioned, many things that I struggle with, in addition to the time management side, I always say with the executive function part of it, sometimes it's just pushing the start button. Like I could look across my house and I could see the dishes in the sink, and I'm going to say to myself, I am going to clean those dishes. I want to clean those dishes. They have to get cleaned. I have no problem doing it. But to push the start button, to get up off the couch and to go into the kitchen and do it. It's not a matter of me being lazy. It's not a matter of me not wanting to do it. It's a matter of me wanting to or like actually pressing the button to stand up and go do the task. That is hard. It has nothing to do with laziness. It has nothing to do with me, being like, I'm not going to do this. I don't need to do that. Nothing to do with that.
Right.
At all.
And I bet because you are very bright and were as a student.
I'm not good at taking compliments, by the way. I have no idea.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, apologize. I never listened.
So you know,
I didn't know to do with my hands. I don't know how to like. People are like, I like your shirt, and I'll be like, geez, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Well, take it from me. You are a bright person.
Thank you.
And I bet that, again, some of the ADHD type things about you as a student was overlooked because you were passing the test. People tend to think, oh, he can do it. What's wrong? He's lazy. And so I do think that, you have a typical profile, actually. African-American male, smart, not doing your work. Sometimes things are missed when we, view those folks. So I'm glad that you discovered, even though it was a different journey for you going through a diagnosis of anxiety and depression first to discover it. Now, I think that there's another diagnosis, OCD.
Yeah, existential OCD.
Please, I need to talk about that.
Yeah.
I started reading about that.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know. It's dark.
So tell everybody about it.
I will give the definition by giving an example, because I think that's the best way to explain it.
Okay.
It wasn't that long ago where I go visit my mom. My mom lives about an hour north of where I live. And anytime I go to visit her, when I'm leaving, I always give her a hug and I walk to my car, and she always stands in the doorway. And when I sit in my car, she closes the door, turns the lights off. That's how it always happens. There was this one day that she gave me a hug, and like she squeezed a little extra hard that time. And I'm like, okay, that was weird, right? And I walked to my car, and I got my car, and the moment that she usually would close the door, turn out the light, she just stood there, just watching in the doorway. And that's when the existential OCD took over. And that's when I started saying to myself, oh, this is the last time I'm going to see my mom. This is God's way, or fate's way, or the universe's way of saying that you need to cherish this moment. Your mom, you're not going to be able to hug her again. This is the last time you're going to see her alive. What prompted this? Literally nothing. Just an extra hug and her sitting a little extra longer in the doorway. The migraine started to spiral. And I did that hour drive home thinking, I'm never going to see my mom again. I've seen my mom like 45 times since then, right? But that is the crux of what existential OCD is. You just end up going down this spiral based off of situations that you just make up in your head. And it's not healthy if you allow it to run your life. And I found that it was happening nonstop. And I was asking myself these questions that don't necessarily have answers. Questions like, what's the point? Like, why am I working so hard? If I die, my parents, who I have an older sister, but she's 12 years older than me. If I die, I'm the youngest. Everything they did was for me. If I die, what do they have left to live for? What do they what's going to be my mom's motivation to live if I'm gone? That kind of stuff.
So it's a lot of philosophical questions that you don't have answers to.
And you probably definitely will.
Instead of being okay with that, you just continue to try to. I just realize as I get older, I think a lot about life and, life after death and how much more time do I have? And it's starting to kind of sit there a lot. And maybe that's natural. I don't know.
It is natural. Get older. It is natural. It's very human to think these things, right? And we often kind of suppress it because we're like, no, we can't. That's an intrusive thought. We don't need to think that. When it becomes an issue, And when it becomes this existential OCD diagnosis is when it starts to affect your life in a negative way. There were times I was not sleeping because I was just sitting up there being like I'm not even joking. I would sit there in my house and be like, the second floor can cave in and I can die. Why not lay here? Or I'm going to go to sleep tonight and I'm not going to wake up and I'm not going to, what's after death? Like, what if there is no heaven? What if there is no afterlife? Like, that's it. Like, there's no, like that kind of stuff. You're adding this stress to your life that does not need to be there. And you're allowing it to control your life and your feelings.
Wow. Yeah, that was a
Fun stuff. Great fun stuff.
Wow. So how do you medication, therapy, how do you cope?
Alcohol. No, I'm kidding. Oh, that's not. No, don't do that. Don't do that. No, like in all seriousness, it's one of those things where I always say to people, I'm not a mental health professional, nor do I pretend to be one. I can only tell you about my journey and hopefully pass that information along, and hopefully you can get something out of it. For me personally, whenever I feel myself spiraling, I always bring myself legitimately back to the moment. So I'll either start worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, whatever it may be. And then I'll be like, okay, hold on. And I'll look around the physical room that I'm in and I'll just literally point out things and say it out loud. Flower, table, camera, friends, like that kind of stuff, right? Bring it back to the moment. And then once you're there, you have to take the next step, which is the difficult part, and say, okay, what are the facts? Is my mom alive? Yes. Did you see anything really that indicates that that's the last time you're going to see her? No. Right? You have to deal with the facts. What actually happened, not what you think is going to happen. Not what might happen. What is actually happening? What is the truth? And then from there, you end up bringing yourself back down to this humbled, calm position where you're in the moment and dealing with factual information, not what you're thinking, but just facts of the situation. And then that works for me. And it's hard. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. It's hard, but it helps me.
Therapy. Are you in therapy? Is it helpful?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it because I find that's the new thing. Everybody has a therapist. But tell me about it.
Yeah, it's called Amazon and it's great. They have Prime, get you your stuff in 2 days. No. No, I go to therapy every week, every Friday. And it's the best decision. It's the best investment I've ever made in my life. And I often hear a lot of people in my DMs and send me emails and messages saying, I can't afford, therapy and so on and so forth, which I get. And like, I will never lie. I speak from a position of privilege when it comes to medicinal resources and therapy and things like that. But I also make it a point to help people understand that there is something for everybody. It's not just about the money. There are resources out there for people that it may be a money issue, it may be a timing issue. For example, single moms may not have the opportunity to go to therapy every week, right? But it's one of those things where you have to make that investment. It is not just a financial thing, it's a time investment too. If you want to be the best version of yourself for the people around you, you have to be able to speak with a mental health professional that can take a 30,000 foot view, unbiased view of your life and give you tools and resources that are made specifically for you. It's not just a matter of reading a how-to book or watching videos on YouTube. While those do help, you have to take that initiative to get the help that you need. It's the best decision I've ever made in my life, and I will always preach that to the end of days. I love therapy, even though it makes me cry legit every time. Every time, because my therapist would be asking me questions sometimes. I'm like, we're just trying to have a good Friday, Cassie. What are you doing to me?
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear you say that because, in a lot of African American households, we weren't talking about therapy growing up. And now, I'm so happy that so many of us are. It's a amazing resource that's
Yeah, and
available
it's
to people.
understandable why people in the Black community, you know, sometimes will be reluctant to go to these resources because in the past those resources, number one, weren't made for us. Number two, they were worked often against us. Number three, the studies behind a lot of the things that are being diagnosed today were done on, we're not done on Black men or young Black children or even women. It was done on mostly males, and old,
Mhm.
young and old white males. So a lot of the information that's out there, even to this day, is skewed, and we don't have a lot of information. It's one of the reasons why you find more women being diagnosed with ADHD now than ever before. And people are like, oh, it's a fad, it's a thing. Everybody has ADHD now. No, more people learning about it now. And the things that, for women especially, where you would be either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all with ADHD, and you end up getting treated for something that you don't need to get treated for.
Mhm.
Now more information is being out there, so a lot of people in the Black community will go to places like church, for therapy, which is a understandable thing because that is a trusted place.
Mhm.
And it's a place within our community that we go
Yes.
to because a lot of the resources, again, I speak from a position of privilege, but a lot of the resources that that I have and other people have, it's not in these communities because either whether it's the government or council, whatever it may be, they're not investing
Mhm.
these resources. So like I'm trying so hard to make sure that we're getting those resources to the people that need
Right.
it.
Right. I take my hat off to you because when I go online and see you, I know you are helping so many people because of the way you go about sharing information and knowledge. You're a comedian. I don't know officially or not, but
I always have a mental health humorist is the best way to
yes,
describe it. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
hilarious.
Thanks.
Every time one of your clips comes on, it's like, "Oh, what? Where is he going?" But
I say that every day.
it's good that you can laugh. And again, I want our viewers to see that even though he has struggles, like some real struggles, he can laugh and make
Yeah.
other people laugh. And he's just having, I think, from where I'm sitting, an amazing life. You have a huge following,
Oh,
very popular, and he's modest.
I it's you know why? It's because my family keeps me humble. My family will never ever let my sister will
Hmm.
never let this get to my head ever,
Hmm.
like at all. Neither will my mom. But honestly, it's the humor side of this. Honestly, started out as an unhealthy coping mechanism. I would use humor as a way to deflect
Hmm.
from understanding what was truly happening to me.
Hmm.
And because of therapy, I'm now able to use humor as a way to help myself understand and process and to add levity to a conversation that is very difficult to have.
Hmm.
And to be able, I'm very blessed to have the platform that I have, to have the audience that I have. They're all amazing and they provide a safe space for me to do these things. It's a two-way street. And I'm nothing without the audience, and it's a very humbling experience. And I'm very thankful.
So, how long have you been out there doing this?
Like
How long did it take for you to get 1 million viewers?
it all started honestly back in 2018. This is pre-pandemic. At the time, I had three things had happened to me. I had ruptured my Achilles, like complete rupture, which is one of the worst things you could do to your leg.
Hmm.
Complete rupture. Um, my relationship that I was in, we had broken up. We had been together for 3 years. And then the third thing that happened is one of my closest friends, Ashton Farley, rest in peace, passed away. All three of those things happened in a matter of a month. I was in the worst place physically and mentally in my life.
Hmm.
And I don't think that I had ever been in that dark of a spot before because there was a moment and I'm sitting there in my house because I was on the third floor in my apartment. We had no elevator and I couldn't
Hmm.
drive because it was my right leg. I couldn't walk, nothing. I remember
Hmm.
sitting there in my kitchen on the floor. Across from the kitchen, there was my closet where I keep all of the like medicinal stuff, like medicines and all that kind of stuff. And I remember looking at that closet thinking I could take all of those things and I won't be a burden anymore to myself or to other people. And it was at that point that I woke up and I was like, oh no, that's not how a person should speak to themselves or think. And I promised myself at that point that I never want anybody to feel the way that I felt in that moment, because there was a moment that I legitimately did not want to be here on this earth anymore. And so I started documenting my physical recovery and documenting my mental health recovery during the physical part of it. And it started there. And then 2 years later, in 2020, the world caught on fire. And a little thing called TikTok started to come into fruition. And that's when things really started to blow up for me. And now it's 2024. And I mean, it's been a whirlwind, and it's been really cool. I got to meet President Biden a couple weeks ago. You know, it was it was really, really a great experience to be.
That was a conversation about you said creators.
Yeah, creator finances. So it was a creator economy conference, and the White House had reached out to me, and I got an email from the White House, and at first I was like, okay, all right, yeah, okay, President Biden. But then they sent a link, and the email address said @whitehouse.gov, and I'm like, okay, you can't fake that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot, and I clicked on the link, and it got sent me to an official link on the White House website, and I was like, oh, okay. And so and they invited me out, and even when you get an invite from the White House, they still have to vet you to make sure you're not insane. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. And they're like, okay, we'll get back to you. And a week later,
they had to check you out.
Yeah, they really did. And then they gave me like an official invite, and went there, got to meet the president, and I was the one person that got to talk. That asked the president a question that day, and I feel bad because my question was so stupid.
I doubt
but it's okay. I panicked. It's all good.
Hey, but you asked. That's the
I did ask
thing.
my question. I panicked under pressure. I don't know if any of you have ever had the president look at you and say "fire away" and then walk towards you, expecting to have a conversation. That's not recommended. It's scary, very scary.
What did you say?
So for context, just so people know I'm not crazy, I stand up room full of other really popular creators. In front of me is the president of the United States. Behind me is the White House press corps. Surrounding the room is the Secret Service. And what he says, I'm gonna take a question from the creators. It points down. I just raised my hand. I didn't have a question. I just raised my hand, and I don't know why. The ADHD impulsivity just kicked in, and so I stood up. As I started to speak, the White House press corps started throwing questions like inflation and blah, blah, blah. And so he kicked them out. And so at that point, all the eyes turned to me, and he's like, fire away. And then Grandpa Joe came walking towards me. And he's like, what's your question? So I asked him, out of all the social media platforms, which one is your favorite? I don't know. I don't know why I asked that. I don't know. It was bad.
What did he say?
He didn't answer it, but he started talking about his grandchildren, and it was adorable. It was adorable. So, but he was only supposed to be in the room for 5 minutes. My question sparked him talking about his grandkids for 40. And so I personally ruined the president's agenda for the day. I don't know. I might have started a war. I have no idea. But I ruined the president's day. My bad.
No.
My bad, world. United States. It's my fault.
But I think that's huge that you did that. People, we need to take risks. We need to push ourselves every day, step into the uncomfortable zones.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything wrong with that question.
Thank you so much.
I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
I bet if you hadn't asked the question, you would be kicking yourself more about why didn't I ask the question?
Absolutely.
So you did.
Yes.
Right? So run with it.
That's how I sleep at night now. But let me tell you, the day of, I was like, what? Why did I do? Oh gosh.
See, in a situation and make somebody smile.
That's a good
thing.
That's a flex. Yes.
But anyway, so what's on the horizon? Any projects or?
I'm working on a couple different books. Number one about embracing your introversion, and one about ADHD and finances, and how ADHD in adults affects people's finances, and things like that. Because I realized that some of the money issues I used to have when I was younger
Mhm.
was sparked because of my ADHD issues, believe it or not, especially when it comes to impulsivity, when it comes to coping mechanisms and things like that. Oh
Spending
yeah. Oh yeah.
and being organized and paying bills on
Yeah.
time.
So
Okay,
yeah,
I
so I'm
get
working
it.
on those two books then there. And then
That's
also just continue
interesting.
to build my platform. I just want to reach as many people as I can. And I don't really care about numbers, whether it's 1 million people following or one. Like
Mhm.
my whole thing is if there's at least one person out there that's listening or watching to the stuff that I do that's affected in a positive way,
Mhm.
that's a win for me, especially if it's a young black boy, in
Mhm.
Jersey that's watching basketball, not
Yes,
knowing that mental health is a thing that it's okay to not be okay, and there's help out there. If I
absolutely.
can have that one thing, it's all worth it.
We all have something.
Mhm.
That's what I continue to remind our viewers. Um, we all learn how to cope.
Mhm.
And sometimes, if it's not going so well, that's when it's time to do something.
Yeah.
If it starts to interfere with your day to day functioning, because everybody feels sad sometimes, we all feel anxious sometimes.
Hmm.
But when it starts to limit you, then that's when, pick up the phone, tell somebody, talk to
Yeah.
somebody. And so I just think you are a great example of invisible matters, because who just sitting there watching you, nobody would think,
Yeah.
that your journey is your journey.
Hmm.
And so I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah.
What would you tell people, just if you wanted to leave them, with a message?
Yeah.
I know that it could be a lot, and it's probably hard even to zoom in. But did anything come to mind that you
Yeah,
would want to?
there's a phrase that I live by, and this doesn't just encompass ADHD, it encompass just life in general.
Mhm.
There is a the from the musical Hamilton, there is a song called "Wait for It," and Aaron Burr sings a lyric in the song that says, "I'm the one thing in life I can control." And ever since I
Mhm.
heard that lyric, it stood out to me because it's so true. It's cliche, but it's true. I'm the
Mhm.
one thing in life I can control. We spend so much time worried about things that we cannot control as opposed to focusing on the things that we can control. I can't
Mhm.
control what another person thinks of me. I can't control what
Mhm.
the car outside is going to do. I can control my family, my friends. I cannot control you, so on and so forth. What I
Mhm.
can control is me. I can control the overall situation, but I can control how I feel
How
about it
you react.
and what actions I take because of it.
Mhm.
So if I could say anything to everybody out there, I am the one thing in life I can control. Write it down, have patience and faith, breathe. It's going to be okay.
Mhm. Thank you. That's perfect. So again, I just want to thank you for coming. Invisible Matters will forever be grateful. You are the kind of person. He's the real deal.
This is the real deal. And if I can throw this right back your way, by the way, because this is a great thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
It's rare, believe it or not, and it's so refreshing to see uh, people, especially in our community, that are
Mhm.
creating spaces, safe spaces like this to spread the word, to spread the knowledge, because this is not a thing that happens often. This is not a thing that I get to. Out of all of the podcasts that I've done in the last 2 years, do you
Mhm.
know how many of the people that I've interviewed, or people that interviewed me? Do you know how many of them were black?
How many?
One. You.
Really?
Seriously.
Really?
Absolutely. Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. That's how
I'm
rare it is. And
surprised.
I've done so many. Um, this is a great space that you're creating, and I applaud you
Thank
because
you.
it's doing more than you realize.
Thank you so much. And so, again, we have had another very informative, personal story that has been shared. And I know I learned a lot. And I hope that all of our viewers learned a lot. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and follow us. and share it with a friend. This was some good stuff today. And Kai, thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming. Take care until next time.